Welcome to the Sage Verse, with real works and true words. Patterns of recognition leave your brain converged. Time is irrelevant when the thoughts of impediment corrupt your soul with mind-numbing nemesis. The sage's way is where the truth hits the page. Turn your soul into a library in the name of knowledge and discovery. We seek out reality to be gone of human apathy. Welcome to the Sage Verse, where we explore the pressing questions of our age. My name is Jason, and today I'm joined by a good friend of mine and fellow founder of the channel, Hermes. How are we doing today, man?
Very well, thank you, Jason. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, thanks. So, it's your topic today. What subject are we going to be discussing?
So welcome to the Sage's Way podcast. The topic I want to discuss for today is the law of attraction. So what are your immediate thoughts to that, Jason?
Well, I've thought about the law of attraction, or I've used it quite a bit in my life. One of the jobs that I got straight out of uni, I utilized the law of attraction to try and get that. Yeah, my immediate reaction to that subject is just having a vision or having an idea and trying to manifest that in reality. Really, and by using affirmations and positive thoughts and sayings to really put you on the path that will allow you to bring that idea into reality, essentially.
Yeah, you broke it down very well there. It's something that's been very much popularized, I'd say, in the last decade or so. It was popularized by The Secret. It was I suppose you've seen it. It's a documentary that came out, a book as well, and it popularized that idea of the law of attraction. It's based on very ancient teachings, occultist, esoteric teachings that I guess stem back. You can find it in multiple different kind of things. The earliest I've personally seen is Hermeticism. In the first book of the Secret, they actually kind of before they begin, they have as above, so below, which is famously attributed to Hermes Trismegistus. They also mention the Emerald Tablets, which are supposedly inscribed by Hermes Trismegistus and found in the pyramids. So it's based on ancient teachings, and more or less what it is the attracting the reality you want to manifest into your own life. And I think the documentary as well as the book do a very good breakdown of how to go about that. I guess we can draw on our own personal experiences, as you mentioned. I've personally used it before. I've used it in my work before, which I can go a bit more into later. I used it to go on the Chinese trip we have spoken about in a previous podcast, where we lived in China studying Kung Fu in the mountains. I also used it to live in Thailand and work and live out there. So I've used it multiple times in my life, and I can guess go into a little bit more detail of how I go about it. So it might help some of the viewers that are more interested in this kind of thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Firstly, some people, because the quote that kind of draws very famous from the law of attraction or The Secret in the movie is thoughts become things. That's I guess the idea behind it. You visualize what you want and you achieve what you want, essentially. But a lot of people, they haven't had a lot of success with this method. Some people have, but you need to realize that it's more to it than that. It's not you're going to picture an ice cream cone in your head and suddenly one's going to form in your hand. It's more than that. There's more steps to it than that.
Yeah, there's a practical element to it, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Exactly. It's how I like to go about it. I usually use the 4 elements: fire, air, water, and earth. So I've read about different ways of applying this. This was my favorite. Fire for me is the spark, essentially. Spark is like that idea. It's the thing that first comes into your mind. It's the initial spark of that which you wish to achieve, or that which you are interested in manifesting. Everyone, initially had that idea that's sparked into their mind. So that's first and foremost where it starts from. Then air for me is slightly more dense than fire. It's when you start to play around with it in your mind a little bit. It's where you actually start to visualize it, start to imagine it to be real. And then the step after that would be planning, or water. It's again slightly more dense than the air. So you're bringing it further, closer and closer to physicality. So with the planning, it's when you actually start to believe, wow, this could actually be real. How would I actually go about that? If I'm going to write down the steps to achieving that, what would I need to change in my life to achieve that? You really start writing it down. And then the final, and I would say one of the most important steps is action. You have to take action on it. Otherwise, nothing is going to really happen.
Concrete steps.
Exactly, yeah. So you need to really have a plan of action. And some people have strengths in different ones. Some people have loads of ideas. I know you're a massive kind of idea person.
I was
you bring so many
resonating with that fire for a second.
Yeah, with the fire, with the air, you're very good. And some people, for myself, I'm very good at planning, but sometimes I over plan and I write a million steps and I never take action because I'm just all formulating a plan, and I have a plan for the plan, and I dive too deep into the finer details. I would say you have to work at all three of these. With the kind of ideas, that's something. Have a connection. Stay within your mind. Flirt with that idea of creativity, or with the idea that you can change your life and your reality. With the thoughts or the air, play with visualization, meditate. Like, you really start to use it. I'll go into a bit later how I've used each step. With the planning, don't overdo it, but again, write down the steps. How would you make it a reality? How would you be able to make it a reality? And then final, like taking action. Like, some people, that's the easiest step. Some people just dive straight into action without a plan. Some people dive into action without ideas sometimes. They're just like very active, very physical kind of people. And then you have people that are completely in their mind, people in the bit in the middle, people a bit good at both. So I think it's about mastering all of those steps, not just one, or not thinking the secret is essentially you have a thought and it's going to magically become reality. That's where everything begins in the mind. Every kind of product we see in front of us, every idea we've seen manifest, it started within someone's mind. Everything began within someone's mind.
For sure. And I suppose, just to pedal back a bit there, for me, when you were speaking about water, intuitively it was just bringing up the idea of flowing, maybe putting in those little concrete steps, or like you said, it's more dense than air. So just planning, but also maybe flowing. Is there an element of that to it as well, with the idea of water, the idea of putting things in motion? So that you can get further closer to bring it into reality. I suppose that is what planning is, right? The visualizing those steps, or taking those ideas that that you're thinking about, and then structuring them and ordering them in a certain way, which is closer to reality than it is just being an idea, isn't it? So in that sense, it is flowing in some way.
Yeah.
So
if I'm going to give an example of, let's say, China, like we both can relate on that one. For me, it started as like a childhood dream, an idea. So that's something that I had for a long time, is just that spark. But it's something that, it's on the other side of the world. You don't really know how to get there. You don't really believe it's actually going to ever happen. So that's where it started for me. And as I got older and started to really learn about the law of attraction, and that I can achieve and do even the craziest things that I've dreamt of, that's the one I really wanted to target first to make happen. And first and foremost, I really had to convince myself it was possible, because if you don't believe yourself it's achievable, if you don't believe yourself you're going to actually go about making it into a reality, then it's not going to happen. That's first and foremost. So that's where I had to start. I had to really actually
me and
meditate.
you are different there, for sure.
Yeah, I had to really meditate and see myself there. I actually searched the temples in Wudang and meditated and saw myself there. I put it in Google Maps and found where I would be staying, had a little look. I really acted almost within my own mind as I was already there. So that's the play I had to do.
I would do this. Yeah, I would do that. Thinking about it and visualizing myself there. But the fire or the idea would be very much a call to action, rather than something that would sustain for a period, X amount of time for then planning to take place. I don't necessarily do the planning so much so that I adapt to the environment in which I'm placed. So so that's where we would differ, in that the spark or the fire would be the call to action.
I would say it varies with different people. As we said, like, some people have certain strengths, some people are very good planners, some people also cynics and don't believe they can achieve their dreams. I was always a cynic. When I had this dream, like I said, I had to do that visualization and that practice to convince myself, first and foremost, this is possible, you can achieve this. Some people are very much, they have an idea and instantly they believe they can achieve it. That's where you want to get to. That's a good thing to have. A lot of people have these senses in their mind, almost like keeping them in line with reality, or what we call reality, or what we call possible. That's what you want to overcome. It's like the Agent Smith from the Matrix in our own mind that's trying to keep us within our set matrix. If you want to break out of it, you have to break free from that hold. And that's where I think the visualization, exactly, that's why I think the visualization can have benefit to make yourself believe it. You want to first and foremost believe it, and when you get to that stage, then it comes the planning or the watering. It's almost, you're like playing with it in motion a little bit. I really wrote down how much will I need to have in order to do that, how much I'm going to have to save each month in order to make that happen. I'm going to need to make sure I cut certain ties that are keeping me to my current environment. I'm going to have to make sure the people around me also believe that I'm going to go. When I started telling people, when I didn't really believe it, they almost reflected that, nah, I don't think you're going to be able to make that happen. And I kept doing it and kept saying it until everyone around me is like, oh, so when are you going to go China? They knew I was going to go. I was almost like an obsession. And then finally, when I had all the steps, I slowly started to take action. I worked really hard at my job. I saved the amount of money I needed. That's set
interesting.
a date.
You said that there.
And I went. I called it to action. I made it happen. I lived on Wudang Mountain for a year. Achieved a childhood dream, studying Kung Fu in the mountains, and it was a life-changing experience for me. And that's just one example of how I've used this.
It's funny you said there that once you had all the steps, then you acted. Whereas for me, it was like I needed the idea and then the action, and then the steps would come after. Almost like a process of adapting to the environment, rather than maybe having a contingency plan or a set of scenarios that could happen. This I obviously think about and I conceptualize, but what I do with that is I almost trust just in my natural ability to adapt, rather than to necessarily think about the possible negative outcomes, which is the positive aspect of having a calculated mind in your regard, is that you're constantly thinking about perhaps what could go wrong, how do I manage this, how do I organize so I don't fuck up, and things like this. Whereas for me, it's not like I have blind faith or anything like this. It's that I, first of all, try to figure out what is most important and prioritize the factors that I need secure, and the rest that is somewhat insecure, in my mind, is insignificant anyway, and I don't have to worry about it. So what I have secure is only that which is fundamental. So I'm only planning for things that I would say are most fundamental, and often they are things that perhaps don't take as much time as it would say having a whole picture of how everything would plan out. So for me, it's as long as I have an idea of what I want to achieve and I can see the big picture, then the details will fill themselves in along the way and the steps will be carried out. It's not like I live through the whole process before I get there and then experience it how I expected. But I will have my expectations and whatnot. But when you were talking about the idea of having thoughts and then bringing them to action, it was bringing up that Plato quote, I think it is Plato, which is, the ideal citizen is the man of thought and action. Don't be impulsive in one's decision making, but also don't just be a thinker and not be able to bring your ideas into reality. So then to draw this all back to the law of attraction and what it stands for, it's having that vision, having that idea or that internal belief, and spreading that belief to the point where it becomes all consuming. When I was practicing law of attraction, I would put cards or pieces of paper with words on my wall that were related to the task or the goal I was trying to achieve. And this was when I was working on getting a stockbrokering job. I would put affirmations on the wall, and I would also have a goal card that would have my vision or my achievement that I would like to obtain. And I would look at that every morning when I wake up and every time I go to bed. And it was something that would become ingrained into my subconscious. So it's something that you have to almost believe before you make into reality. Because if you don't believe in yourself, then how do you expect others to believe in you? So this is where law of attraction comes in. The meaning is in that sentence there, the law of attraction. So you attract what you think about, and you become what you think about. So if you visualize yourself as someone who is a stockbroker or someone who's living on a mountain learning Kung Fu, and you put in the necessary steps that your thoughts would naturally entail, then the process is as such. It's just having the initial fuel, that fire, and then in your case, and obviously in my case as well, that water. And there's analogies we're making here, but yeah, that water, the planning, and just everything that's allowing you to manifest the idea into reality.
Absolutely. And like you said, some people do, very well with the ideas. Some people have a lot of ideas that come, but as we said, it's the least dense thing is that fire,
it can
or
be
is
fleeting.
that spark. It can be fleeting, absolutely. Some people have so many amazing ideas, and then they go out their head the next minute and they don't act on them. So it's like you're bringing it slowly more into physicality from, like I said, less dense to you're bringing it too dense. It's just a nice step or framework I like to use in order to achieve that. Yeah, because to have an idea, sometimes you might have an idea, you play with it in your mind, and I don't think that's going to really work. So that's absolutely fine as well. But that step of playing with it in your mind or visualizing it is to really, because from that quote I said before, as above, so below, same as within, so without. We are the manifestors and the creators of our own reality. And that is a huge responsibility. And some people don't realize that they are. Like, if you don't have this understanding, some people are going through immense suffering in their lives and immense negative circumstance. If you do take this responsibility, it takes away that aspect of victim mentality. You're no longer, life isn't happening to you. You start to realize the steps and the things in which you're doing and the interactions in which you're having that is causing your current life or your current circumstances. And some people don't want to take that level of responsibility. They would rather play the victim. They would rather say, that life is happening to me. And
we have greater control.
Yeah, absolutely, you have greater control. Like, even if it's the smallest aspect in how you're speaking to people, how you're coming across, like, it can make a massive difference in your life. And being the creator of your reality, you can see it as like a blank canvas and you're the holder of the paintbrush. If you really understand that you're the creator of your reality, and the steps in which you're taking and the habits in which you're making are what's leading you towards achieving or experiencing your physical reality, then you can be strategic in how you're going about using that paintbrush. If you're not, then it's just splattering and random, and it's just a big mess that you're going to see on that canvas. So it's really important to, first and foremost, to take that step, if you're ready and willing, that you are the manifestor of your reality. How you see things around you can change, and you can formulate and change them and direct them in the way in which you would like.
Yeah, you put it there very clearly, that you are in control of how you manifest your own reality. And once you realize that, it's actually quite relieving, because no longer do you have to worry about external circumstances in so much that they impact your decisions, right? And this is where the Stoics are great. They distinguish between that which is beyond one's control and that which is within our control. So if you can take control over that which you actually, believe it or not, do have control over, then you can start to implement these ideas, or implement your ideas into actuality. So take a possibility, and instead of asking yourself or telling yourself that this is impossible because X, Y, and Z, start just thinking about how you could make it into reality, or how you could go about taking those first early steps. Because rather than thinking so far into the future and seeing that something is very difficult to achieve, it's hard to see yourself from at A go to Z, right? Without looking at all the steps. It's hard to imagine that you could end up at Z or Z when you're at A. So that whole gap needs to be filled by things. And if you worry or you don't know what those things are, then that's just going to add a level of anxiety, which is unnecessary. What you need to focus on is what is B, right? Okay, you have the long-term vision of what you can achieve, and that's where you want to go. But that's just something that needs to be almost put on the back seat. And you need to face every obstacle or every challenge that comes your way as a new inviting task that ultimately leads you to this final purpose, so to speak. So looking at, and this is almost being reactive to your environment rather than, as you say, being proactive. Because yes, you can be proactive and you can be reactive at the same time. You can be proactive in your ideas, in that you have something that you want to strive towards, but then life obviously throws itself at you and you have to react to the obstacles that come your way. There's only so much. I suppose, it's interesting. We're bringing two different perspectives here, because I would say that I very much react to what comes my way, where I would say that you very much proact. You've got levels of understanding of what could possibly occur before it happens. Whereas I do, but related to what is happening in the first place. It's not necessarily something I would worry over, because if I feel ultimately it's beyond my control, and my strength lies in my ability to only act in the moment, less so than perhaps thinking about what could be the steps. I would say you're far more strategic in that sense.
I'd 100% agree. Personally, we all do notice the things in our life that has effect that we wish didn't, and that we don't have control over, that they do exist. There are certain politics and wars and things in life in which they do happen. But for me, how I like to live is I don't even focus on them. I don't want to even think about them, because why should I? If I can't control them, then what's the point of them even being in my mind? They're just lowering my frequency. They're just drawing me down. I would rather focus 100% of my consciousness and energy on the strings in which I can pull, the things in which I can control my own life. And when you really start to play with that, you realize it's actually a lot bigger than you initially anticipated. We do have amazing level of control of our own lives and the directions in which they can go in. But yeah, first and foremost, you have to make that decision. And yeah, this reminds me of the book The Alchemist.
That decision is huge. Oh, The Alchemist is a great book. Did we both find that book in what was that hotel called, or that hostel called? Do you remember?
I don't remember the name. It was a little hostel in China, all the foreigners would go to play a bit of pool, read, have a little drink. But yeah, it was. I read it out there. It's an amazing book. It's basically about, again, a young boy that ends up going on a journey, a sheep herder, and he has an amazing kind of experience. And he meets this guy, the alchemist. You can also compare that to the sage, someone that's really worked with these laws, or really got to a level where they're able to, because maybe when you start with the law of attraction, you might not be very good at it. You might take you a little while. You have to really play with it till you have that first breakthrough. And then you're like, wow, actually, I believe I can do this. And it's almost like your imagination barrier expands a little each more as you have these breakthroughs. But a lifelong practice of achieving that, you become the sage, you become the alchemist, the person that can turn lead into gold, or your own life from shit into gold. That is the metaphor that we speak here with these kinds of teachings and understandings. That is literally what you're doing. You're formulating and transferring your own life from one element to another, more high frequency, more that which you would like within your own life.
Once people realize that where you are today is wholly dependent, for the most part, on your decisions prior to that case. I know we like to blame the government for our situation. I know we like to blame other things. And yes, as a child, you know, that responsibility is taken away from you. This is obviously not something that children have control over. Their responsibility is in the hands of the adult or the parent that's looking after them. So this is not so much applicable to children in the sense that it's never your fault, right? Because responsibility is not yours. The responsibility lies in the hands of the parent or the guardian or whatever. So, with that being said, whoever has responsibility in whatever situation it is ultimately has control over how their life goes. So once you realize that you are ultimately in control and responsible for your well-being, then you can start to see how every decision that you make is consequential. There is a cause and effect for everything. And if you want to improve your outcomes, you need to improve your causes at the end of the day. I mean, it should be obvious, you know, and it should be obvious because how do we end up where we are? We end up where we are because of decisions that we make. And we like to blame, or we like to take the position of a victim because it's comfortable. Right? Do you know why it's comfortable? Because there's no responsibility, right? You're not held accountable for anything. And of course, there are circumstances beyond oneself that override or impact us. And those we can't be held responsible for. And those are outliers or exceptions that we should automatically already understand that they're not in the same category as something else. When someone is saying that you are responsible, you can create the life that you have, this is talking to the generalization of how much control an individual can exercise over themselves. The outliers or the exceptions that come our way only really cover a certain proportion of society, or there are specific cases where responsibility is taken away from you and you are ruled in some sense by some atrocity or something that's difficult, an obstacle that you ultimately have no control over, whether it be a disease, whether it be homelessness, whether it be whatever it might be, something that is far more difficult than the general way of life or what usually applies to the masses. So when you realize that as a general individual that has a normal life or normal circumstances, and yet you as an individual who is actually quite privileged in that state, when you're compared to other people who have greater difficulties, are complaining or taking the position of a victim, when ultimately we have control over our circumstances. It's just about having a perception of the self that is not self-hating but self-loving, right? And having an optimistic attitude that inspires ideas to arrive, and those ideas which you then can put into motion. Now again, I want to make sure that I distinguish there that when we're talking about people who have ultimate control, they have responsibility, or they have the opportunity for responsibility. That's important.
A metaphor I like to think of when thinking of the ideology is like, you can think of, say, the ocean, the wavy ocean. That's not something necessarily we have control over, but if you're a surfer that's surfing within that ocean, you have the ability to adapt to the waves and just to stay afloat rather than getting pulled under. That is what you do have control over. Your level of skill, of the rhythms of this world that we live in, or the rhythms of your own life.
We have control over our responses. Maybe not what's coming our way, but how we respond to things.
Exactly. And to go back to that idea of the example I got of manifesting my way to China, it wasn't smooth sailing to get there. It was first overcoming my own mind, then setting down the plan of how to do it, then calling to action. And then as I was saving, it might have taken me 2 years in total to get there. And towards when it was maybe in my sight, I remember I had a significant financial setback, and I could have used that to dishearten me. This is never going to happen. But at that stage, I was so passionate and I was so sure I was going to get to where I was going to get to. The job I worked in at the time was a sales job, and I was like, I'm going on the same day. I don't care. And that month, I ended up breaking the company record. I broke the company record essentially, and I think I made like £7,000 in 1 month because of the amount of crazy sales that I did that month, which like no one even thought was possible. And I did that because I had a driving force, I had a purpose, I had a why to get me there, and I wouldn't have had that without.
But it's the same.
It's like you have a massive wave coming your way. It's like you choose to let it draw you down, or fight against it, or ride with it, however you want to see it. You move with the rhythms, and it didn't set me back because it was that test. Maybe it was that final test I needed to really prove I'm going to get there. And you will have those in your life. They will come every day, and it's your responsibility to focus on the strings that you can pull to overcome them, to help them work with you rather than against you. There's many ways you can see it, but yeah, that's a kind of personal experience that might draw inspiration to some people.
Opportunities for courage, tests, and whatnot. They ultimately test one's character or allow you the opportunity to weigh yourself against an opposing force and see how you come out at the end of the day. Something like trying to make ends meet. Of course, sometimes life is that. Sometimes the very trivial or basic things that we take for granted in life are huge obstacles for a large portion of society. And again, this is Maslow's hierarchy of needs here. The idea that to try and self-actualize and bring those ideas into reality, we need to take care of other needs. So, it's difficult here. When you're considering the law of attraction, you could use the law of attraction to fulfill needs that perhaps are not necessarily related to some great vision or purpose. They may just be to put food on the table. Do you know what I mean? Or just to live one's life comfortably. Not everything has to be this grand purpose or putting something into motion that, I don't know, whatever it might be that you might have. It could just be something very simple. And often the simple things that you try and achieve, they often provide a degree of motivation and inspiration for larger things. And they give you the tick that tells you you've succeeded. The small wins help you with the big wins. So don't take for granted those small wins in life, because they matter just as much as the large. Because without the small wins, the large would never happen. Lao Tzu's quote, every 1,000 miles begins with a single step. So every single step, every single win is just as great as the big win. It doesn't matter at the end of the day. Just try and win, basically. That's what it comes down to.
And again, as you were saying there, and as I mentioned about the imagination barrier, like you said, a small win leads to a greater win and a bigger win. If you look at, say, the Olympics a few decades ago, and what was able to be done with certain records, and how as we move forward, or usually when someone breaks through a massive accolade and breaks a record like no one's ever seen before, you'll see shortly after other athletes will also be able to do that because someone else had done it first.
Very true. There's a significance.
It's like our imagination barrier moved that step forward as a humanity. So now we actually believe we can achieve it. In reality, you could have achieved that all along. You didn't really need anyone else to do that.
Yeah, you didn't need validation or it to have been done beforehand. No, you're 100% correct there. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what this practice is all about. We all have a level of imagination barrier of what we really think we can believe in our life. This practice is trying to push that forward to really, maybe you don't start with, I'm going to get £1 million and I'm going to do it tomorrow. Because do you really believe you can do that? Maybe not. Maybe you need a few more steps.
One has to be realistic, right?
Yeah. Maybe the sage could do that because they've had a lifelong practice of that. They know they can do it. There's no doubt within their minds that they can manifest that. There's people out there that have done that. You know, like I said, it's about working this for you. Everyone's in a different stage of their life, and it's an amazing practice. Something that's transformed my life, and it's something I'm sure can transform your life as well. I think yeah, we've covered quite a lot there. I don't know if Jason has any kind of final things he wants to add to that.
No, I was just thinking, yeah, we covered quite a bit there. It's been interesting talking to you about it. I know it hasn't been something that I've been thinking about consciously, but it's definitely something that drives, or it was a driving factor that has almost become a part of myself. I would say that with ideas, I always try to bring them. Ideas come and go, right? And those which stick are worthy of taking further. So it's become a part of who I am in terms of bringing something into reality, or trying to achieve things and trying to complete things. I'm not consciously thinking about the law of attraction, so to speak. I'm trying to take that more into action rather than maybe mere thought.
Agreed. Again, I just contemplating the whole kind of chat we just had. It's it draws inspiration to me again as well, because sometimes we forget certain things when we're young and passionate. We really drive to achieve certain things, and sometimes in the motion of life you can forget. So I'm just thinking about my next thing I'm gonna use the law of attraction to draw for my own life. But yeah, again, thank you for listening to our ramblings. I hope you pulled something out from it. I appreciate you listening. I appreciate you watching. If you are a subscriber, thank you. If you're not, hit that subscribe button. We'd really appreciate it. Please share with your friends, your family. Please comment in the comment section below topics in which you would like us to discuss. We'd really appreciate that. And that's pretty much it from me. Peace out.
Spread the love. Peace out.
Welcome to the Sageverse. Please just observe the birth of this creative surge for the purpose to leave hatred purged and replaced with words that will make you learn to take your place on earth. And once you've taken your place and found your greatest of traits, cultivated the day, this will be making you say, this is the Sage's way.